They say time heals all wounds, but some wounds don't close. They just become a part of you. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 33 years old. I live alone in a small apartment just outside Portland. My days are quiet. Too quiet. I work from home as a freelance editor, drinking more coffee than I should, and spending most evenings curled up with books that don't ask questions I don't want to answer. To the outside world, I'm just another woman trying to make ends meet. Neighbors see me as polite, a little shy, always with headphones in at the mailbox. What they don't see is the scar that lives just beneath the surface, the part of me I buried long ago, the part one never talk about, the daughter I never got to raise. It was spring when everything changed, 17 years ago. I was 16 and stupidly in love with a boy named Lucas Granger. We were young, reckless, and thought we knew what love meant. I still remember the morning I stared at that plastic stick in my hand, the word pregnant, burning into my vision like a brand. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. When I told my parents, their reaction wasn't anger, it was cold. My mother, Deborah, stared at me like I'd spat on her church hymnal. My father, Richard, didn't even speak. He just stood up and walked out of the room. That silence cut deeper than any shout ever could. Within days, my world collapsed. My phone was taken, my visits with Lucas were forbidden, and I was sent away to live with a distant cousin in Seattle under the lie of family illness. I was pulled out of school, forced to hide my pregnancy, and told repeatedly that this never happened. My mother said it was for the best, that I'd thank her someday, but I never did. When the baby was born, a little girl with dark hair and lungs that screamed life, I wasn't even allowed to hold her. I caught a glimpse through tears and nurses before she was taken away. No name, no goodbye, just gone. They told me it was a closed adoption, that I had no say, that it was better this way. I cried myself to sleep for months. And then, eventually, I stopped crying. Because crying didn't bring her back. I returned home with dead eyes and a fake smile. Finished school. Went to college on a partial scholarship. Tried to forget. I didn't speak to Lucas again. My parents never brought it up. We all just moved on. Or at least they did. I carried her in my heart every day. Every birthday passed like a silent thunderstorm. Now, in my 30s, I've become a master of pretending. To coworkers, I'm just not into kids. To friends, I'm focused on my career. But the truth is, there's a room in my soul that remains locked. Untouched. A nursery that never was. It was a Thursday when the first strange thing happened. I was checking my email, half distracted, when I saw a message with no subject line. The sender was unfamiliar. hope1234@outlook.com. I almost deleted it, thought it was spam, but something stopped me. When I opened it, there was only one sentence. Do you ever think about the girl you lost? I stared at the screen, the words burning a hole through my chest. My first instinct was to panic. Who would send that? How would they know? I hadn't even told my closest friends. No one in my current life knew. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I closed my laptop and paced around my living room like a caged animal, heart racing. Old emotions rose like a flood. Guilt, fear, confusion. That message was a spark, and everything I had tried to bury for years was catching fire. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking of her. Was she alive? Was she okay? Was she somewhere wondering about me too? The next day, I checked the email again. No new messages. I clicked the sender profile. There was no info, just the name Hope. Fitting, I thought. Painfully fitting. I didn't tell anyone. I kept the secret like I always had. But something inside me shifted. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, a storm rolling in, and I had no idea whether I'd fall or finally fly. The following week, I saw her. I was walking through a local bookstore downtown, just killing time, when I saw a girl at the poetry shelf. She had dark hair, a slender frame, and the kind of posture that told me she didn't want to be noticed. But something about her. I couldn't look away. She looked familiar in a way that rattled my bones. And then she looked up at me. Her eyes were my eyes. I froze. She didn't say a word, just gave a half smile, then turned and walked away. I didn't follow her. I couldn't move. My legs were jelly, my vision blurry. I stood there for what felt like years, every part of me screaming a single word. Could it be? For days after that encounter in the bookstore, I couldn't function properly. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head. Her face, her eyes, the way she looked at me like she knew. I tried convincing myself it was coincidence. Maybe I was just projecting. Maybe I wanted so badly to see my daughter again that my mind invented her in a stranger. But something deeper inside whispered. That was her. I didn't even get her name. I'd let her walk away. What kind of mother does that? I barely slept that night. I sat on my bed scrolling through local social media profiles, school pages, anything that might give me a clue. I typed in phrases like Portland teens adopted, reunion stories, closed adoption search. I fell down rabbit holes of forums and articles until my eyes ached. I found nothing. But the more I searched, the more determined I became. The next morning, I responded to the email from Hope 1234. My fingers trembled as I typed. Who are you? No reply came. Not that day. Not the next. But then, 3 days later, at 2:14 a.m., another message landed in my inbox. I think I'm your daughter. I clutched my chest like I'd been punched. I read it again and again. Short. Simple. Earth-shattering. I replied instantly. I asked her name. I asked where she was. I asked if she was okay. Another reply came, slowly. Her name was Olivia. She was 17. She'd found adoption documents by accident in her adoptive mother's desk drawer and had been searching for answers ever since. I was shaking. Tears blurred my vision. Her name was Olivia. I never got to name her. My parents had handled everything. But Olivia, it was beautiful. She was beautiful. We emailed back and forth for days. She told me she lived just outside the city close all this time. She liked writing. She was applying to colleges. She hated olives and loved thunderstorms. Every sentence she wrote felt like a gift I never thought I'd receive. But then came the question I had been dreading. Why did you give me up? I stared at the screen for hours. I had no idea how to answer. How could I explain the pressure? The manipulation? That I was barely 16 and silenced by the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally? I decided to tell her the truth. I told her about Lucas and how we were torn apart. I told her about being shipped to Seattle. Isolated, scared. I told her I never held her. That they took her before I even saw her face. That for years, I lived like a ghost of myself. When I hit send, I cried harder than I had in years. The next day, she replied, I believe you. Those 3 words brought a release I didn't know I needed. But the peace was short-lived. A week later, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was cold as ever. You've been talking to her, haven't you? I hadn't told anyone. But somehow they found out. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to sound composed. Don't play dumb, Emily. Someone from the agency called us. Said she's been reaching out. That you've been emailing. You are reopening wounds that should have stayed closed. I clenched my jaw. She's my daughter. No, Emily. She's someone else's daughter now. You gave up your rights. No, I snapped. You took them. A long pause. Then, you're making a mistake. I hung up without another word. My hands were shaking. That night, Olivia messaged me again. She wanted to meet. I was terrified. What if she changed her mind when she saw me in person? What if I disappointed her? What if I didn't measure up to the idea she'd built in her head? Still, I said yes. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, neutral, quiet, the kind of place where life feels gentle. I got there first, heart pounding, palms sweating. I had no idea what I was supposed to say. I kept imagining what I would do. Hug her? Cry? Apologize? When she walked in, I recognized her instantly. This time, there was no doubt. She looked like me at 17, but stronger. Wiser. She sat across from me, her expression unreadable. Hi, I whispered. Hi, she said back. There was a long pause. full of everything words couldn't hold. "You really are her," she finally said. "I knew the moment I saw you in that bookstore." I blinked. "You knew?" She nodded. I'd already found her name. I was working up the courage to say something, but I got scared. I got scared too. We talked for hours. She asked questions. I answered as best I could. She told me about her adoptive family. Good people, but strict, distant. Her mom had passed a few years ago. Her dad wasn't very present. We laughed awkwardly. We cried. She told me she liked poetry, like me. She even kept a journal. Before we left, she handed me a folded paper. "I wrote this the day I found your name." I took it home and read it after she left. It was a poem. One line stuck with me. "I never knew your voice, but my heart remembered your silence." After that first meeting, something inside me shifted. For the first time in 17 years, I wasn't just surviving, I was beginning to feel alive again. Olivia had opened a door I thought was permanently sealed, and now that she had stepped into my life, I wasn't going to let her slip away. But I also knew this wouldn't be easy. She was still processing everything, so was I. One meeting couldn't undo years of absence, and I didn't want to force a bond she wasn't ready for. But I also didn't want to lose this fragile beginning. So I made a choice to fight for her the way I should have all those years ago. I started researching open adoption reunion counseling. I didn't want my emotions or guilt to smother her. I wanted to show her I respected her boundaries, but I also wanted to make it clear I was here. And I wasn't going anywhere this time. I sent her a message the next morning. "I know we just started this journey. I'm not perfect, but I want to be part of your life, on your terms. If you ever want to meet again, talk, or just share music or stories, I'm here. No pressure." She replied hours later. "I want that too. But there's a lot I still need to work through. I'm scared, you know?" "Me too," I replied. "But maybe we can be scared together." Over the next few weeks, we exchanged messages daily. She sent me photos, her prom picture, her cat, the bookstore she loved. I shared snapshots of my own life, my tiny balcony garden, my editing projects, an old photo of me at 17, pregnant and hidden. She stared at that one for a long time. "You were just a kid," she whispered when she saw it in person. "I always imagined you as this distant, untouchable figure. But you were just like me." Her words made my heart ache and swell at the same time. But not everything was going smoothly. My parents found out we'd met. It started with unexpected knocks on my door and voicemails filled with righteous indignation. Then came the visit. I didn't invite them, they simply showed up. "You're ruining that girl's life," my mother hissed the moment I opened the door. Her voice was low and venomous, as if she couldn't bear to say the words too loudly in case someone overheard. "She deserves the truth," I said calmly, stepping between them and my living room. "She has a family," my father added. "You were supposed to leave her alone. That was the agreement." "No," I snapped, louder than I intended. "That was your agreement. I never had a choice. And I will not let you control this anymore." "You're being selfish," my mother spat. "No. I've been silent for 17 years. That was selfless. Now, I'm being a mother." They left without another word. That night, I told Olivia everything about how they'd forced my hand, about how they still tried to pull the strings even now. She didn't respond right away. When she finally called, her voice was soft. "They don't deserve you." I cried after we hung up, not because I was sad, but because for the first time I felt seen. But things got more complicated. One evening, Olivia messaged me. "I told my adoptive dad I found you." My stomach dropped. "And how did he react?" "He's not happy." Apparently, her father had always been wary of birth parents, especially after her mother died. He believed revisiting the past would unravel everything. He forbade her from contacting me again, told her I was a threat. She was 17, still technically under his guardianship. She couldn't disobey easily. "I don't want to stop talking to you," she messaged. "But I have to be careful. He goes through my phone sometimes. I'm scared he'll find our emails." I was angry, furious even. How could the world keep silencing her like it silenced me? But I didn't want to make her choose between us. So I offered something else, a private P.O. box, a space that was ours. I gave her the address. She agreed. Letters became our lifeline. Handwritten words have a magic all their own. In those letters, she told me things she couldn't say aloud, about her fear of disappointing both families, about her confusion, her anger, her longing. I wrote back with honesty and love. I told her about the first time I felt her kick, about how I used to hum lullabies to my belly when no one was watching, about how I remembered her birth date every year and whispered, "I love you," into the air like a prayer. Weeks passed. Then one day, her letter ended with a question. Would it be okay if I met Grandma and Grandpa? I stared at the paper, stunned. My hands trembled as I picked up a pen. "I'll support whatever you choose," I wrote. "But please understand, they may not be who you want them to be." She replied, "I need to see for myself." I knew then that things were about to get much harder. I was restocking books on the community library shelf, humming softly to myself, when a quiet voice said, "Excuse me, do you know where the biographies are?" I turned toward the sound, ready to guide a patron like I had 100 times before, but the moment I looked into her eyes, the world tilted. Hazel eyes. Big, expressive, like they held 1,000 untold stories. Eyes I had only seen once but never forgotten. My heart stuttered. My breath caught. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The girl, no, the young woman, smiled politely, clearly unaware of the earthquake that had just torn through me. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice concerned now. I forced a shaky nod. "Yes, sorry. Biographies are just down that aisle. Second shelf." She thanked me and walked away, but I stood rooted, hands trembling. My thoughts raced back to that sterile hospital room, the pink blanket, the fleeting moment I was allowed to hold her, the silent goodbye I was forced to give. My baby girl.
No.
It couldn't be.
Could it?
I couldn't stop staring as she browsed the books, running her fingers along the spines like I used to. She tucked her hair behind her ear the exact same way I did. And when she smiled at an old lady beside her, I saw my own crooked smile reflected back. A tsunami of emotions crashed into me: shock, joy, guilt, hope. What were the odds she'd be here, in this small town, in this quiet library? After all these years, I had to know her name. I approached slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, I didn't catch your name earlier." She looked up, caught off guard, but smiled warmly. "It's Lily. Lily Matthews." Lily. Tears welled up in my eyes. That's the name I gave her. My parents never knew. They never asked what name I whispered when I held her for those final minutes. I had chosen it alone, from a poem I loved. The Lily of the Valley. I remember thinking she deserved something beautiful, something pure. "I'm Anna," I said, my voice shaking. "It's nice to meet you, Lily." "Nice to meet you too," she said kindly, her eyes studying me now. "You look familiar somehow." I laughed nervously.
People say that.
Maybe I have one of those faces. She tilted her head slightly, as if trying to place me. And then she smiled again. "Well, it was nice talking to you, Anna." She turned to leave, but I couldn't let her go. "Wait," I said, louder than I intended.
She paused.
Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to talk more." She looked at me, hesitant. Sure, I guess." And just like that, the tiniest seed of something planted itself. Possibility. Maybe even fate. As she walked out, I stood there shaking. Was I imagining things? Was it truly her? One thing was certain. The universe had just cracked open a door I thought was sealed forever. I didn't know it then, but the day I walked out of my parents' house for good was the first step in a long journey that would lead me back to her. Years had passed. I'd built a quiet life in Seattle, working as a floral designer, running my own little shop, and avoiding anything that reminded me of the past. But no matter how much I tried to bury it, the thought of my daughter lingered like the scent of jasmine after rain, sweet, nostalgic, and haunting. Every year on her birthday, March 3rd, I lit a candle for her. I didn't know her name. I didn't know if she had my eyes or if she laughed like me. All I had was a hospital bracelet I'd secretly kept and the fading memory of the soft cry I heard before they whisked her away. Then, one evening, I saw a post online. I had joined an adoptee support group under a fake name, hoping just to read stories. But that night, someone posted something that made my hands shake. It said, "Born in Chicago, March 3rd, searching for my birth mother. All I know is that she was 18 when she had me." My heart stopped. That was my date, my city, my age. I messaged her anonymously. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I didn't even know what to say, so I typed, "I think I may have information about your birth." Minutes felt like hours. Then she replied, "Really? I've been searching so long. Do you know anything about my mother?" My fingers trembled. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. How do you tell someone you're the mother they never knew? How do you say sorry for letting go? That night, I didn't sleep. I kept reading our messages over and over. She sent a baby photo from her adoptive parents, her tiny hand clutching a pink blanket.
She looked just like me.
The weeks that followed were a blur of emotion, healing, and discovery. I couldn't believe how natural it felt to be around Ava. There was no awkwardness, no strained silences, just an unspoken understanding between us, as if our souls had never truly parted. We met every weekend at a quiet little cafe in town, or took long walks in the park. She told me about her love for photography, her dreams of traveling, and how she'd always felt different growing up. She didn't know why until she met me. "I used to stare at the mirror and wonder whose eyes I had," she said one day, her voice soft as we sat under a tree. "Now I know. Yours." Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled. "I used to talk to the stars at night, wondering if you were safe, if you ever felt my love from afar." It was surreal. We were building a bond from the ashes of a past we hadn't chosen, but we were choosing each other now. Every shared laugh, every tear wiped away, felt like a thread mending the ripped fabric of our connection. Ava wasn't just forgiving. She was incredibly wise for her age. She didn't blame me for what happened. In fact, she said, "You loved me so much. You gave me a life you couldn't give at the time." That's strength, not weakness. Her adoptive parents were wonderful people, and I was grateful. They gave her what I never could have back then. But still, Ava said there was always a hollow space in her heart. Now it was filling. We even started looking at old baby photos her parents had kept. She brought one of me, taken when I was 17, holding her at the hospital before she was taken away. "This photo stayed with me," she whispered. "I kept it under my pillow, even when I didn't understand what it meant." That shattered me in the most beautiful way. Eventually, she met my husband, Thomas, who welcomed her with open arms. And she met her half-brother, Caleb, who was instantly attached to her. Watching them laugh and joke felt like witnessing a miracle. And then one Sunday afternoon, while we were all in the backyard having lemonade, Ava turned to me and said, "Mom, is it okay if I call you that?" I froze. That word, that one syllable I'd never heard from her lips. I choked on my tears and nodded, my heart pounding. "Only if you really want to." She smiled. "I do. I always have." That was the moment everything changed. Not just for me, but for all of us. Ava wasn't just a lost part of me anymore. She was home. The days following our reunion were filled with both joy and chaos. Charlotte and I were finally together, but the pain of the past lingered like a ghost in the room. She had questions, so many questions. Why had I given her away? Did I ever try to find her? Did I love her? I answered with trembling honesty. "I loved you from the moment I knew you existed," I whispered. But I was 17. I had no power. My parents, they didn't give me a choice. Charlotte listened quietly, absorbing every word with eyes that mirrored mine. Her silence didn't hurt. It allowed space for the truth to sink in. One evening, as we sat on my couch going through old photo albums I had kept hidden from my parents for years, she looked at me and said, "I always felt like something was missing. like a part of me was somewhere out there, waiting. She wiped a tear. And now I know it was you. That sentence became the balm over years of pain. But there was still one confrontation left: my parents. I hadn't spoken to them since Charlotte found me. They had no idea she was back in my life. Part of me didn't want to give them the satisfaction of meeting her. The other part, still that frightened teenage girl, wanted closure. So I invited them over. They arrived, older now, weathered and slower, but still carrying that air of control. When I opened the door and they saw Charlotte sitting in the living room, their faces drained of color. My mother gasped. "Is that?" "Yes," I said firmly. "This is Charlotte, my daughter." The room fell into stunned silence. My father tried to recover. We did what we thought was best. Charlotte stood up, tall and steady. "You didn't do what was best for me. Or for her." For once, my parents had no rebuttal. No lecture. No excuses. Charlotte turned to me and gently took my hand. "You don't owe them anything." And she was right. That day didn't end with a tearful reconciliation. It ended with me choosing my daughter over the people who had once taken her away. For the first time, I felt free, not just as a woman, but as a mother. I remember the next morning like it was wrapped in gold. The sun streamed through the windows of my modest kitchen, and for the first time in decades, the air didn't feel heavy. I was making pancakes just like I used to crave when I was pregnant. Only this time, they weren't for me. They were for my daughter. Lila sat across the table, smiling softly, flipping through one of my old photo albums. We'd spent all night talking, crying, laughing, filling in the missing pieces. It wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was ours. And that was enough. I asked her if she hated me. Her eyes shimmered, and she shook her head. "I used to. But when I looked at you, I didn't see the villain my adoptive mom sometimes described. I saw someone who was broken like me, but still standing, still fighting." We decided to meet again soon, to take it one step at a time. She didn't promise a relationship, and I didn't ask for one. But we agreed to try. That was the miracle I hadn't dared to ask for all those years. A week later, I visited my parents. I didn't tell them about Lila. I just told them I forgave them. They looked stunned. My mother cried. My father didn't say much, but his hands trembled. "You've changed," I told them. "I have too." They didn't deserve to know Lila, not yet. Maybe never. But I needed to release the bitterness. Not for them, for me. For the mother I was finally allowed to become, even if it was years too late. Months passed, and Lila and I grew closer. She met my husband, who welcomed her like a lost star finally returned to the sky. She visited often, asking questions, showing me pictures of her childhood, letting me braid her hair like I used to dream of. One night, before she left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for letting me find you." And in that moment, the years we lost folded into a single, silent breath of healing. And so my story came full circle. The girl I was forced to give up, the baby I cried for every night, grew into a young woman full of grace, strength, and forgiveness. Grace didn't just find me, she healed me. She filled in the hollow spaces I had carried for 2 decades, the ones my parents' decisions had carved out of me. In the end, I had to forgive too. Not just my parents, but myself. For the silence I had kept. For the years I convinced myself I wasn't worthy of being called a mother. For the times I let their guilt overshadow my truth. I look at Grace now, sitting beside me, her laughter echoing through my home, a sound I once thought I'd never hear. We lost years, yes, but we've gained something unshakable, a bond that defied time, shame, and distance. To anyone out there feeling like life has stolen something precious from them, don't give up. What's meant for you has a way of returning, even if it takes years. Even if it shows up on your doorstep with trembling hands and tearful eyes. I lost my baby once, but I found my daughter again. And this time, I'm never letting go.